Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. There are only 2 game weeks left now, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you my early thoughts on transfer plans ahead of game week 37. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, before we look ahead to game week 37, as I said, with only 2 game weeks left now, let's briefly review game week 36. And I'll be entirely honest, it wasn't a particularly good game week for me, and it feels like the worst time to have a bad game week. With only 3 game weeks left, and when you are trying to push for a certain rank, you can't really afford to slip up at all. So it was 52 points all out, which puts me back up to about 19k overall rank. That might look like a small green arrow because I've only gone from 15 to 19, but that now puts me about 20 points off the top 10k. I'm not saying 20 points isn't possible. Last season, I bought Uppbeat in game week 38, and he got me 18 points alone. So if I can manage to nail 37 and then maybe get a differential and even captain them in 38, it's absolutely still possible, but I would say it's a bit of a long shot now. But it wasn't the aim at the start of the season. I was only aiming for that because of where I am. That aim has always been top 50k. That will now be 4 ranks in a row inside the top 50k, which I'd be absolutely delighted with. And it's getting harder and harder to do well in FPL. But do let me know where you're currently ranked. Let me know how many points you manage. And let me know how far away you are from where you want to be. It wasn't a particularly great week for my team, but I think it was less so my team and more so quite a few of the rank threats that I don't own, such as Eze, Chris Wood, etc., also returned. I can count myself quite unlucky, though, because I went into the game week without any Man City attackers, and they could have very well scored a few goals, and I didn't have Haaland, didn't have Kevin De Bruyne. But yeah, a lot of my players just were pretty disappointing this week. The heroes for me were Munoz, Bowen, Sarr, and Brian Mbeumo. Munoz and Sarr, though, could have come away with so much more in that game, including Jean-Philippe Mateta, who had a big chance himself. He had 4 shots in the box. It did feel like they managed to dodge the points quite a lot. And, of course, Eberechi getting the brace. That man has punished me week after week. I'm just pretty lucky, actually, that he hasn't had higher ownership, because he seems to score at the moment every single week, including getting a penalty the week before as well. But, yeah, him getting a brace hurt quite a lot, especially when Mateta came off in the 59th minute for a 1-pointer. I actually would say that Mbeumo and Wissa were pretty disappointing too. It's obviously nice to get the assist from Captain Mbeumo, but you really wanted more. And Yohan Wissa to get booked and come away with a 1 point himself. I mean, look at that front line. Isak, Wissa, Mateta, 4 points between them is pretty disappointing. The hero for me is Jarrod Bowen once again. I think he's now returned like 5 weeks in a row or something like that. I bought him 3 weeks ago. He's got 3 returns in 3 as well. I captained him last week. Like, he is delivering for me when I really, really need him. I just could do with a little bit more to push me towards the top 10k, but I'm not going to complain there. Annoyingly, 2 of the big decisions for me this week were, do I start Areola or Raya? That was a 6-point swing. And then Bradley or Konsa, and that was a 4-point swing. So it's actually a 10-point swing. That would have put me on a small green arrow up to 14k if I'd have started those 2. And you might say, Ross, you were never going to. If you go back to my transfer plans video at the start of last week, I had Areola and Konsa in my team and Bradley and Raya on the bench. I just thought that Bradley has higher upside because Konsa doesn't have much attacking threat, and I think that is still true. And I thought, I expect both teams to concede. At least Bradley's got the attacking threat. And on Raya versus Areola, I again expected both Arsenal and Aston Villa to concede. I just thought, I'm going to back the better defence, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did manage to keep Liverpool out, given that Liverpool aren't really fighting for anything. That panned out terribly. Manchester United obviously didn't score, although I think we accumulated almost 2 XG in that game. And obviously Raya did concede. So there was a few fine, call, like small 50-50 calls that could have gone in my favour, and it could have been a green, but it wasn't. And so I'm sat here now, like I say, 19k, which, by the way, I'm still very happy with as an overall rank. About 20 points off the top 10k. I think my aim for 37, as we'll discuss in a second, is just going to be to get the most points possible. And then when we get to game week 38, I'll work out how far off I am, and I'll work out how much of a risk I want to take with captaincy and with transfers. And if I want to take something like a -4 hit to really go for it. Let me know how many points you managed for game week 36. Let's now look ahead to game week 37. So guys, looking ahead to game week 37, I've currently got 3 million in the bank and 1 free transfer. The team's not looking too fantastic, I'll be honest, but I think a lot of teams this week don't look that great. Like, there aren't many standout fixtures for a lot of the players that we already own, and even the players that do then have standout fixtures, I'm not necessarily sure that you would want to go and invest in them. For example, Jamie Vardy against Ipswich, or Everton players against Southampton. Like, a lot of the lower teams in the league play against each other. which is, I think, why when you look at your own team, it might not have that many standout fixtures. The good thing is lots of players playing at home. So apart from my 2 Liverpool boys, the other 9 players are playing at home. I've got lots of players playing at home on the bench as well. So maybe it won't be a terrible game week. And sometimes when something looks good on paper, it goes horribly, and vice versa as well. But yeah, I've got that 3 million in the bank. I'm not scared to take a hit in 37. Like I said, I'm probably not going to get top 10k, but I wouldn't imagine I'd drop too much further, at least I hope. So I'm probably in that awkward in-between stage where like play teams that are on the beach in the Premier League, where they're sort of like 12th or 13th and they can't really do much else. I feel like I'm basically there right now, right? I'm on the beach. There's not much I can do in either direction, but I can still have a bit of fun with it. So yeah, I don't hate the idea of taking a hit, but only if something arises where I'm like, I really think that deserves a hit in this situation. As well as obviously going through the team, the first thing to think about is we, of course, have the FA Cup final on Saturday. So we've got the Friday deadline. Manchester United, Chelsea, and Spurs versus Villa is playing on the Friday night. So we've got those 2 games on the Friday. We've then got the FA Cup final on the Saturday, a load of games on the Sunday, and obviously the 2 teams that play in the FA Cup final, City and Palace, they have their games on the Tuesday. The reason I bring this up is, firstly, that means that all of our players that play for Man City and for Crystal Palace, we won't even know what happens in the FA Cup before the Game Week 37 deadline. So we are going in completely blind. They could get injured, they could pick up issues, they could be fatigued, they could win or not win. All of that might impact how many minutes they get on the Tuesday, but we won't know that before the deadline. So that is the first issue. And then also, like I said, just rotation in general. Like, if these teams win, they are going to be very much celebrating over the couple of days, especially if it's Crystal Palace, because they don't have much to play for in the Prem. They could go full-blown rotation on the Tuesday. Equally, if they lose and they want to get straight back to it with a win in the Premier League, they might go fairly full strength. We're just not going to know these things. If you own someone like Kevin De Bruyne or Omar Marmoush, that's going to be very difficult to try and predict too. So that is the first major issue that we're going to encounter, as well as, like I said, our team's just not looking fantastic. Let's start with the goalkeepers. I got this very wrong last week, so please let me know what you would do this week. It's Raya and Areola, both of them playing at home. Raya against Newcastle at home, Areola against Forest at home. I don't think Forest have been particularly good, but once again, I've got Raya in net here, just because I think Arsenal are a significantly better defence than West Ham. I don't think either keep a clean sheet once again, but maybe I do just play Areola, because it's a slightly better fixture on paper, and Forest aren't the best attack. They never have been. Even when Chris Wood was flying, they were getting a little bit fortunate in terms of converting a lot of low XG chances. But yeah, at the moment, I've got David Raya in there. I am very happy to have Raya and Saliba, because whilst they haven't had great fixtures recently, in Game Week 38, double Arsenal defence against Southampton away does feel quite nice. With the back 3, I actually think this is significantly harder than usual. The only player that I'm pretty sure I will have in is Gvardiol, but do bear in mind how many minutes Gvardiol has played this season, and they'll have the FA Cup again on Saturday. There's even a chance that Gvardiol's rotated with like Diaz, Akanji, and Nico O'Reilly. You just don't know. So I think he's the only one that will stay. But then outside of that, it's a bit of a minefield. Munoz, if I knew Munoz was going to start, Munoz has been absolutely exceptional this season. He's got a nice home fixture as well. But again, Munoz has played so many minutes. If they do win the FA Cup, could we see a little bit of rotation for him? Could he be someone that gets an early sub? I think at the moment, his fitness is brilliant. Like, if you watch Daniel Munoz, he's sprinting to the 90th minute. He doesn't seem like the sort of player that desperately needs a rest. So I've got him in the starting 11 at the moment, but there is some concerns there. I've also got Connor Bradley, because the quotes from Slot made it sound like he would get really good minutes over the remainder of the season. Brighton away is not a great fixture, but he does carry that attacking threat. And I don't mind that he gets early subs. In fact, I actually quite like the early subs, because you would hope he's done the attacking return damage in the first 60 if he gets it. And there's always the chance to bank the clean sheet as well, as long as he does make it to the 60th minute. You've then got 2 other good options on the bench though, right? Saliba against Newcastle at home. Again, I could maybe start Areola and Saliba rather than Raya and Bradley. I think I would like one Arsenal defender, but do we expect a clean sheet again? Maybe not. And backing against the Arsenal defence hasn't gone that badly recently. And then I've got Ezri Konsa. Aston Villa have won their last 2 games 1-0. Spurs didn't score against Crystal Palace. They're going to rotate quite heavily ahead of the Europa League. I think a lot of people probably say, just put Ezri Konsa in your team. I just kind of fancy Spurs to score in most games. They tend to. Of course, they didn't in Game Week 36. So that's something to think about. I need to start 3 of those 5 defenders, and I have a bit of a goalkeeper benching headache. Let me know which goalkeeper you'd start and which 3 defenders you would start as well. In the attack, I don't think it's dreadful, but I also don't think it's that ideal. Like, I would argue that 2 of the best captains this week are Cole Palmer against United and Ollie Watkins against Spurs. Both of them playing on the Friday night, so they're both technically the early kickoff. But you would just fancy with, again, Man United and Spurs rotating quite a lot and not being good defences anyway. Like, they both lost 2-0 in this game week. You'd kind of fancy the two teams to do quite well, Chelsea and Aston Villa. So having the two sort of talisman for the team, I quite like the sound of that, and I don't have either of them. I also think Bukayo Saka has looked very lively, and again, you would expect Arsenal to go full strength against Newcastle. So some of the best attackers for this week I don't actually have in my starting 11. But Jared Bowen at home against Forest is fine. And Mbeumo at home against Fulham is absolutely fine. And Rodgers against Spurs. I think that midfield with Salah captain actually looks pretty good. Lots of people will say Salah cap isn't the one. He's not performing at a very high level. He's barely getting any chances. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it's the pressure of trying to break the records, if it's like the rest of the Liverpool team don't have that same level of motivation. Maybe Salah's motivation in general has dropped off. We know he's chasing the records, but do you have that same level to really desperately push when all you're chasing is records rather than trying to win the Premier League? So, yeah, maybe Salah's motivation has dropped off more than we thought it might. Or maybe it's just coincidence. I don't know what it is, but Cap Salah should normally feel really good, and it doesn't feel as good. But when you look at the players that I currently own, who are we captaining if not Mohamed Salah? That's the only slight concern I have, is like I don't really want to put the armband on anyone else. My front three at the moment is Wissa, Isak, Mateta. I think Wissa against Fulham is fine. I've only just bought him. He gets 90 minutes. He gets chances. Fulham just lost 3-1. I think the end result was they conceded 3 goals to Everton. So having him Mbeumo and Wissa is fine. Isak against Arsenal, not ideal. Maybe the very fact that I've got Isak in my team means I should maybe start Areola instead of Raya and maybe just back the fact that Newcastle score potentially. But it's also never a bad thing to have Isak playing at home. He's not been playing at a very high level. I will admit that. Every time I watch Newcastle, I'm like, does Isak actually fancy getting involved in the football match? Like, he's not playing very well. But it doesn't take much for world-class players to just flick that switch. Flick the switch and to be back in form. So all it takes is that one moment. And Isak has that in his locker. I know Jean-Philippe Mateta's in the starting 11. He's not going to be in my team. He has been so disappointing for the last 6 to 8 game weeks. Subbed in the 59th minute, of course, in game week 36. The reason Mateta's in the starting 11 is I very much plan on selling him. I could, of course, sell Ismail Assar instead and then play a 3-5-2. Or I could sell both Mateta and Ismail Assar, and then maybe bench someone like Alexander Isak. I don't think I need to do that this week, though. I think just using one transfer to sell one of Sarr or Mateta, and then obviously playing the person that I bring in and then benching one of the Crystal Palace assets, it probably makes the most sense. I actually think Sarr's a really good player to have if we think he's going to start. But again, we're not going to know what happens in the FA Cup final before the deadline. So I kind of feel like it's not a bad idea to just bench Sarr. And then if I need him, if anyone misses out, it's nice to have Ismail Assar as the first sub. So that's the team as things stand. Again, it's not great, but 9 players playing at home. I have covered a lot of the major bases. I've got penalty takers in there. I've got set piece takers. I've got the talisman for a lot of the teams as well. The players that I really want are all quite expensive is the issue, right? They're the likes of Saka, Palmer, Watkins, which aren't easy to get in, especially in the midfield. So in the next section, we'll go through how I plan on getting some of those players in. But before we even go through that, I want to know 2 things. Firstly, what would you do if this was your team? 3 million in the bank, 1 free transfer. Who would you bring in? Would you take it here? Is there anything that you like the idea of? And also, what are your plans for Game Week 37 as well? So yeah, let's do a little bit of planning ahead for the final 2 weeks and try and work out where we might make up some points. So guys, 2 small things. If you're wondering what that bit of light is here, that's coming through from my blinds, because my blind isn't doing the job of being a blind, and it is letting the sunlight through throughout this entire video, but that's what that is. Second thing, I said throughout my video and in my graphic, I've had Isak playing at home against Arsenal. Obviously, he's not playing at home against Arsenal, given that Arsenal are playing at home. So Isak is playing away. Silly Raptor. That means obviously 1 further player playing away, and also Isak himself will not be as good playing away from home. So small error there that I've corrected, but in Game Week 37... the 2 players that I really want to own, believe it or not, Cole Palmer, I know a lot of people won't like it, they won't understand it, but still set pieces, still has penalties, still is a good footballer, and he's playing against a heavily rotated United team before the Europa League. So Cole Palmer, maybe Bukayo Saka, but Ollie Watkins is the main second one against Spurs at home. Again, Spurs going to rotate heavily. Watkins is still getting chances. I like the fact that he got 90 minutes in Game Week 36. If I look at my team and my setup, I don't have a route to Cole Palmer other than selling Mbeumo or Bowen or taking a -8 hit or potentially a -4, but I would have to take a hit. I could do something like Isak down to Evan-Nilsson and Sarr up to Palmer, and that is something that I will absolutely consider, but I do just feel like a more straightforward transfer. Mateta is an issue in my team. I don't want Mateta and I do want Watkins, so I have comfortably enough money to just do Rogers to Watkins? No, to do Mateta to Watkins in my team. So that would leave the team looking pretty good. Honestly, at the moment, I genuinely think I would give him the armband. If I'm chasing a little bit, definitely Salah will be a higher percentage captain than Watkins. A lot of people just default to Salah, and I don't blame them. I might even potentially do it myself. But I think Watkins will be popular, but nowhere near as highly owned as Salah. So if I'm trying to really make a last push, I do think Watkins in and captain is a really nice idea. So that's the plan as things stand. I could then take a hit for Ismaila Sarr. I'd have 7.1 million in the bank. Are there any midfielders that you think are that good for Game Week 37? Just no one stands out. And then the thing is, if I sell Sarr, I then have to bench one of my other 7 attackers. And I don't mind them. Like, yeah, I'm okay, I guess, benching Isak. But I don't think there are many midfielders I desperately want to own over Alexander Isak. So it just puts me in a position where it's a boring, straightforward transfer, Mateta to Watkins, but it's a move that I may very well make. So that's the team for 37. Then going into 38, I would probably have Rodgers, I think, in instead of Ismaila Sarr. And let's say that Bradley doesn't start because Trent gets the final home game. I don't know if that will be the case, but the team still looks fine then, right? So I've got double Arsenal defence against Southampton away. I've got Contra against United, Guardiola against Fulham, a midfield 4 of Salah, Bowen, Mbeumo, Rodgers. All of them have good fixtures, right? Salah against Palace, Bowen against Ipswich, Mbeumo against Wolves, Rodgers against United. And then a front 3 of Isak against Everton, Wissa against Wolves, and Watkins against United. I would be happy just not making a transfer there. I think that team looks absolutely fine. In terms of high upside fixtures, I think it's Bournemouth versus Leicester and it's Arsenal versus Southampton. So I've looked at something like Wissa to Evanilson. Or if I'm really chasing, at that point I could do Isak to Evanilson. If I think that's, like, Isak is going to be very highly owned. I know he's playing at home. It's a good fixture. But if I really want to differentiate, Isak to Evanilson is not a bad move. Something that I really do like is like Sarr to someone like Martinelli or Trossard, if we know who's going to start, or we have a good feeling against Southampton. I don't think Arsenal will have that much to play for. I think at that point they would have very much wrapped up Champions League football, you'd imagine, but that might just be an absolute goal fest against Southampton. Although, given the way that Southampton defended against Man City, maybe not. But yeah, something like Sarr to Martinelli, I would then have a bit of a benching headache, right? Maybe Wissa or Isak would go on the bench at that stage, or maybe Morgan Rodgers, but that feels quite high upside. Really, Game Week 38, what you do is wait for team leaks. And I know it's a boring way to play, and we don't really want team leaks in the game of FPL. I personally don't. I'd much rather there were no leaks. But that is the way that the game is. And we could get a leak that there's a random benching. Like randomly, Bowen, Mbeumo, Wissa, Watkins, Isak. One person is randomly benched, and then you just react based off that. Or maybe we get a couple of leaks that my defenders are benched, and then I can make a defensive transfer. I think ideally, though, I want to bring in a high upside attacker against Southampton or Leicester. I think that does make a lot of sense. And I think the team overall looks good enough to have a good green arrow in Game Week 38. So yeah, that's the plan of things now as things stand. So Watkins in and maybe captain, not confirmed. And then in Game Week 38, it would be to bring in Martinelli. The other thing that I have considered, rather than Martinelli, is, like, I'll leave Martinelli in there for now, but do Isak down to Evanilson. And then Roger, and then I can't do that, can I? I'm outpriced of that now. I wanted to get Saka in. Oh no, it would be. Hang on, not for Rodgers. Here we go. I can. I was wondering how I couldn't do that all of a sudden. So rather than going for Martinelli, go for Saka, and then I fund that by doing Evanilson in for Isak. That feels very high upside, right? My concern with that is taking a -4 in the final week. I don't like a hit for a single week. I've always said this, like taking a hit before a wild card or a hit before the hit for 1 week doesn't always pay off. But getting Saka and Evanilson for Southampton and Leicester, taking out Isak, going into this sort of 3-5-2 is looking very, very strong. I could always play Wissa ahead of Rodgers at that point as well. So that's another option that I have if I want to get a little bit spicy and a little bit more aggressive. So yeah, Watkins in for 37 feels quite likely. I just want to get rid of Mateta. And then I want to bring in Evanilson or Semenyo or Cliver or Saka or Martinelli. These are the sort of players that I'm considering as of right now. I do quite like this upon reflection. Maybe it's worth just getting aggressive. Oh, well, if the hit doesn't pay off, at least I can say I gave it a go. Very early thoughts, of course. My mind's a bit frazzled from such a rubbish Game Week 37, but that's roughly what I'm thinking at the moment. Let me know what your plans are for the final 2 weeks. Let me know how many points you have to make up. And yeah, let's try and have a positive couple of green arrows to finish the season and just aim as high as we possibly can. So guys, there we have it. That is my Game Week 37 transfer plans and a bit of an early look at what I'm planning for the next couple of weeks. If you did enjoy this video, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. I do really appreciate all of the support at the back end of the season. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.